this myth that Sellafield is the fairy godmother, sprinkling its magic dust over West Cumbria. It sprinkles radioactivity over West Cumbria, not magic dust.
I'm proud of the fact that my relatives have been involved as nuclear pioneers almost over generations, and I'd like to think that my children can do that in the future.
I blame Sellafield for my daughter getting leukemia. I didn't want Sellafield to prove to me that they caused the leukemia. I wanted them to prove they didn't.
People expect me to be frightened and shocked and concerned and all this, but if I was all that, I wouldn't be here, would I?
Sellafield is the most hazardous place in Europe, according to its own directors. It's a nuclear reprocessing site that's responsible for the recycling and disposal of nuclear waste from nuclear power plants around the world. Many members of the neighbouring communities are concerned about the health risks of radiation, but Sellafield is the major employer of the region. So how does a community that relies on the nuclear industry for financial survival deal with the concerns over the health of themselves and their children? The site began operating in 1947, making atomic bombs before it became home to the world's first commercial nuclear reactor, Calder Hall.
It is with pride that I now open Calder Hall, Britain's first atomic power station.
At its conception, Sellafield brought much-needed employment to a deprived area. The economic necessity of the industry overshadowed any concerns that the community might have held.
In a place like West Cumbria, as I understand it, before the war, there was nothing. Kids would come out of school and go straight on the dole. And I think this memory that people had, they were grateful that there was a factory which provided full employment and good employment.
Today, Sellafield employs 10,000 people, which means almost every household in the neighbouring towns have or had at least one family member working at the site.
In my local community, it's the most peripheral community in England from Westminster. And so in an era and in an environment where public spending has been absolutely decimated by austerity initiatives from national government, it becomes very, very challenging, very, very tough for peripheral economies like mine to survive, let alone grow. So Sellafield will create job security, will create longer economic prosperity, will shore up and improve an economy which has its basis upon public spending.
Even though Sellafield has been crowned the most hazardous place in Europe, any health concerns workers might hold are rarely discussed.
Some workers are worried. Off the record, people will say, yes, we do have our concerns about this, that and the other, but generally, I think it's one of these psychological things that they may realise that they do work in a very risky place, but if you don't dwell on it and if you don't think about it and you don't talk about it, everything's going to be all right.
But Sellafield's confident that workers are safe.
The average Sellafield worker, for example, gets less of a radiation dose in a year than somebody who flew to New York and back. So actually, radiation doses are very rare and aren't very high and wouldn't have any kind of consequence on people's health because we monitor it and we know and we check and we know that people are safe at work.
One of the things about nuclear, which is different to most other industries, is the order of magnitude of safety is about 1,000 times greater than any other industry. So the safety regulation they put on the industry is so high. So for example, you have to project out what's going to happen to this container over the next 10 to 100,000 years. That's a very difficult thing to know. And the statistics of the industry make it, without doubt, one of the safest industries ever.
While the safety of the workers may be protected by industry regulations, some members of the community are worried about the health effects of leftover radioactive material in the environment. Susan Darcy's daughter, Gemma, was just 3 years old when Susan took her to the GP because she was too tired to play.
So the GP looked at me and went, "It's great what they can do these days." And I went, "What is it?" First thing that come to my head was leukemia. Why? I don't know. Apparently Gemma had one of the rarest forms of leukemia that is in a child. It usually happens in old age pensioners, chronic myeloid leukemia, which is known to be caused by radiation. She was the third child in her school to have myeloid leukemia. Child. It's so rare that it never happens in a child. She was the third 5-6-year-old to have myeloid leukemia.
Although radiation epidemiologist Richard Wakeford acknowledges the increase of childhood leukemia in the area, he thinks the cause is more complex.
There's no question that there has been an excess number of cases of childhood leukemia in Cisco since 1950. And so there is reason for people, again, to be concerned about that. But they have to look further than the fact that it could be to do with radiation, for example. One of the big ideas that's grown up over the past couple of decades or so is that childhood leukemia is predominantly a rare response to a common infection.
But Susan thinks that Gemma's cancer was directly linked to radioactive waste discharged by Sellafield into the Irish Sea following the closure of a contaminated beach.
Radiation had been swept back in to sea, and they said that they had cleaned the beach. They're marvellous people. Stuff that lasts for thousands of years. You've got a beach, every grain of sand, but they cleaned it. It was totally safe.
While Sellafield continues to discharge radioactive waste into the sea, Sellafield claim that they are within safe limits.
Any discharges that go from Sellafield are within kind of agreed limits with the Environment Agency and the safety regulators, and things like that are monitored and checked. And again, there's never been any cause of anyone's cancer or anything like that proven to be caused by anything like that.
It's very difficult, to ever associate. If you spent a week with your children on the beach here and your child got leukemia, would you ever associate it with that week maybe you spent at the beach? You couldn't. And I think that's why Sellafield gets away with it, because radiation from Sellafield in a cancer doesn't leave a fingerprint.
At the moment, there's no way of directly linking the cancers in the surrounding community to Sellafield emissions, particularly because, at low doses, it's impossible to distinguish nuclear radiation from the radiation you're exposed to every day, like when you're talking on the phone or you fly somewhere. Even if you eat a banana, you're exposed to radiation. But research in Europe and the US is going into developing methods that could reveal the cause of individual cancers.
There is a lot of work going into what's called biomarkers at the moment. For example, trying to get a signature or fingerprint of a particular exposure. There's work, for example, looking at lung cancer cases and seeing if you can get a signature of smoking. And it's hoped that such a biomarker could be established for ionizing radiation. That would assist a lot. Because you could say, well, this particular cancer has got the signature of radiation exposure. The problem then is identifying the source.
Even if a strong link was demonstrated, Sellafield has become so integrated in the community that change may be difficult.
Sellafield's really at the heart of everything that goes on in West Cumbria. Our workforce is the backbone of every kind of charitable organisation, every kind of sporting club and different community group that's our workforce is out there and working as part of the community. And through some of our funding, we put money into all kinds of different community activities and different groups.
But some of the community members are worried that their influence is too widespread.
Sellafield controls the fabric of this county. It's into everything. So it's very difficult to find anywhere that is not doesn't have somebody with the Sellafield connection. Even our local MP is ex-Sellafield.
While what is known as the dirty business of reprocessing nuclear waste is set to end by 2018, much of Sellafield will continue to be radioactive for thousands of years. This requires the careful and complex process of decontaminating and dismantling old buildings, which has been underway since 2005 and is set to cost in excess of £80 billion of taxpayers' money. This will ensure the community jobs for years to come. Despite the high cost of decommissioning old buildings, Plans to build 4 more nuclear power plants on Sellafield land are in place, meaning West Cumbria will be a nuclear community for many generations, whether they like it or not.
People are used to Sellafield. They understand what it's about, what the site's about, and that they understand, that it's operated safely, and that it's a really good employer and is a really good thing to have in the local community.
The more Sellafield expands, the less likely there is to be any sort of alternative employment for people.
This is safe, and we should have more of it.
There must be some renewable energy out there that's not going to harm people.